Erasure.
I'm so sorry, repeat that again.
I said cultural erasure.
For colonization? Okay, so yeah, that's part of it. And what does decolonize mean? If colonization is about erasing somebody's culture, then what would the opposite of that be?
Going back to your roots.
Going back to your roots. Okay, good. Any other guesses or even questions about colonization or decolonization? So I wanted to open up that way because today we are going to be talking on the topic of decolonization. And we do have two guest speakers. One of them is in a very remote area in Oaxaca right now, and he has very bad service. So he's gonna chime in a little bit later. He gave me a couple of videos to share with you in the meanwhile, and then he's gonna jump in after the videos, and hopefully he can connect with us and we can have a quick Q&A for him, okay? And then I will present to you our second guest speaker, but the topic for today is gonna be decolonization. So before I start this video, I just wanna ask a whole separate question. I want y'all to think about what your typical surfer looks like. When I say typical surfer or a stereotypical surfer, what comes to mind?
Blonde hair.
Blonde hair.
I think so.
What else?
Like someone who's like super tan.
Okay, super tanned, blonde hair. What else?
Like a Ken doll.
Like a Ken doll?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Athletic.
Say that again.
Someone that's athletic.
Someone athletic. Okay, very good. Who do you think invented surfing? Like who would you say is mostly in that sport?
I'd say indigenous people.
What makes you say that?
I mean, because they were in the area of like a lot of water, so they must have invented some type of like paddleboarding and stuff like that.
Okay. Any other guesses?
Pacific Islanders.
Okay. Good guesses. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you this video. So I'm gonna share my screen. And I want you to keep in mind, right, we had two very opposite descriptions of what does a stereotypical surfer look like today, basically a Ken doll, right? Blonde hair, athletic, with the tan. And so we typically think of a white male, right, who is the dominant group that is in the surfing culture, if we want to say, in today's surfing culture. And then the interesting part of that is when I asked, who do you think invented it? You referred to indigenous people, okay? So you're already making these connections. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you this video. And while I'm showing you this video, I want you to just really take note of how can indigenous people, we talked about what it is to be colonized, right? The erasure of our cultures, and then what it is to decolonize. So how are these youth using, what are they doing to be able to decolonize and reconnect with their indigeneity, okay? So let me share that with you.
I created Native Like Water to reintroduce the coastal environment to the indigenous youth of San Diego and that have been moved back from the coast into the mountain. It's crucial for us to be back in our natural habitat and helping to recreate the narrative which has been void for many years of our place here on the coast. We are one with water, we are like water, we flow like water. Now you don't want it sideways, again, because there's more surface it'll pick up. So every time you go out, you're gonna go straight at stuff. Native Like Water is a program for Native American Indigenous youth. It's to reaffirm and reestablish our connection with the ocean, with the waterways, and the relationship with ourselves.
Surfing is a healing. It's definitely an outlet for me. I'm from the Kumeyaay Nations and La Jolla Bandalaseño Indians. We are coastal tribes, so that's where I find my connection to the ocean. We went from the ocean down to the deserts.
Do you have everything you need? You're good?
Yeah, I got it.
Woo, beautiful day.
It's kind of hard for me to get to the beach. It takes us about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get here. The sensation I get when I'm around the ocean, it's really indescribable. It makes me feel good, so that's why I keep coming back.
All right, guys, here's you guys' paddle. You three are gonna go with Dan. We'll meet you down at that little spot. The removal of Native American coastal folks from San Diego was a process that began when the Spaniards came through, and through the development and thievery of the coastal properties within San Diego. A lot of different groups who've been displaced by real estate and expensive coastal property. And without having any species connected to their natural habitat, you'll have extinction. So the coastal culture that you see now is not really indigenous coastal culture, which came with the land for thousands of years. A lot of it has been appropriated. Surfing is one example of that. Surfing was the indigenous tradition. It was a lifestyle. It was something that we practiced every day for thousands of years. A lot of it is not documented, so we look to the stories of Hawaii or the stories of Peru and see what kind of role surfing played within their community. In Hawaii, it was the young ladies that were the first surfers, that would ride the waves, and that would be a part of the courting system with young men in that coastal environment. So seeing these ladies gracefully glide along the ocean is something very spectacular. This is like as queenly as you can be in that state of connectedness to earth, to your community. We're talking about courting, we're talking about creation. So surfing is an excellent way to reconnect youth to their natural habitat and strengthen their relationship with their own identity.
Surfing to me, it really means a huge middle finger to the stereotypes that surfing all has, because I'm getting away from the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, tan, masculine-dominated sport, and I'm getting out there as a minority myself. I feel like I'm making my ancestors really proud when I'm here at the ocean because they pushed us back and now I'm standing here strong.
I want to just say thank you guys again and show my gratitude, not just to you all, but to the Creator for allowing us to be here. I always just point out that we're the ancestors' wildest dreams, so they never thought we would be probably back on this beach. These coastal areas, whether it be San Diego or Los Angeles or Santa Barbara, this is our natural birthright to visit, to live, and to recreate. We are here to reclaim that surf identity, that indigenous recreational lifestyle.
Okay, y'all, so what did you take from that video? What were maybe some of the terminology, the language that was used, or the ideas or the history? What did you all take from that?
That the women were actually the first ones to surf and ride the waves, not the men.
Yeah, that, and that they were women of color, right? They were indigenous women. I love that. What else? What else did you all take from this?
They're using surfing to decolonize a lot of the stereotypes that are around.
Very good, Nancy. Maybe one or two more voices. Remember to use your voice, it's powerful. What else did you all take from this?
That they're trying to bring back the, not bring back the stereotype of just like, like the Ken doll look, but the native look, the actual factual of them doing this first. And it's the same thing with appropriating with a lot of other things, like same thing with like hairstyles and stuff. Like a lot of different cultures don't want to appropriate another culture's what they've done before them, and they want to take away from them and make them not, you know, make them not feel great, you know, and it strips them of their identity. And that's why I think this, what they're doing is bringing back the identity and making them strong and showing the power that they do have.
Thank you, Taya. Anybody else? One more voice?
That the tribes are coastal, but then they were driven from the coast, and they're still put the effort into coming back to it.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? Like, how was it that they became disconnected from that culture and that relationship with the ocean? It was through that process of colonization, right? And so they were stripped of that identity as people who have a very tight relationship with the ocean, and they were pushed into the desert area, right? Like a completely opposite a type of environment for them. And so, and for the reason of expensive properties being built in that area, right? And so today we call that gentrification, right? When people who are already established in an area are pushed out because of investors and you know, high priced properties that we can no longer afford, and so we're forced out. And so some argue that that's a modern form of recolonization of land and property, because we continue to be displaced peoples, right? And so when we are displaced from our neighborhoods and our communities, then part of our identities and cultures are then also stripped away, okay? Because where we live is a hub of culture, you know. So depending on, like in the neighborhood that we're in, you can hear all kinds of music on the weekends, you know, from like banda to oldies to, you know what I mean? So in this neighborhood, there's all this culture that comes with it. And so if we are displaced and removed in all these different areas, then we no longer have that cohesive collective culture that we built as a neighborhood, right? So, you know, those are things to think about. So I definitely want to introduce at this point the gentleman that was speaking throughout the video. His name is Marc Chavez, and he is the founder and director of Native Like Water, and also the Intertribal Youth. He was born and raised in Los Angeles County and is of Mexican-American, Indian, Nahua, Michoacan, and New Mexican Spanish descent. Chavez graduated from the University of California, San Diego, with degrees in communication, third world studies, and postgraduate research and community educational linkages. In the year 2000, out of San Diego, California, was when he founded Intertribal Youth with the aim to indigenize education, and has been nationally and internationally recognized as a holistic approach to education. Holistic means like your whole being, right? Not just your intellect, but your spiritual, your emotional as well. And in 2014, Chavez initiated the Native Like Water program to focus on youth and adult cultural exchange between ocean and freshwater land environments, with close attention to Hawaii's leadership in curriculum development, standards, and maritime education. So this is a beautiful example of how we cannot just wait for the state or for the powers that be to develop curriculum that is focused on our cultures and that honors and cherishes our cultures. We have to take it upon ourselves to create these programs. Okay, that's a beautiful part of who we are, is that we can take it upon ourselves and create it in a way that we feel honors us in the way that it should honor us. Okay, so that is Marc. And again, Marc is going to be trying to connect with us all the way from Oaxaca in a little bit, but he wanted me to share another video with you, which is about 10 minutes long. And this one is going to focus more on the Intertribal Youth Program rather than the Native Like Water program. And so I want to pose 3 questions to you as you watch this video, okay? So I want you to try to answer these questions as the video is playing. The first question: what are the issues that the Native youth and their communities are facing? What are those issues, okay? The second one is, what are they doing to push back against these issues? And the third is, what kind of society do they want to live in? What is it that they're trying to build? Okay, y'all have those three? So in the meanwhile, the video is playing. I'll type the questions in the chat, but I also want you to just kind of be ready because I've explained them already, okay? So what are the issues? How are they fighting back? And what kind of world do they want to live in? All right, let me share that one now. Here it is.
We are not living stereotypes. We are not redskins. We are not diggers. Some of us live in teepees, don't. We are all different, yet still the same.
I just want us to be like proud of who we are, like to embrace our culture.
To be native like water, to be on the earth like water. Water is the blood of the earth.
And let everyone know that we're so
a lot of people need to hear what we have to say. It's important.
We are silent in America. Where is our section in the history books?
Give the opportunity to my people to tell their story. Not a lot of people tell what they've been through and how they've grown.
And almost for them to just at least try to understand what we have gone through.
I think what we're doing is important because we're going against the stereotypes that our society has put us in. If you Google search Asian American, it's very recent, or like African American, it shows their culture and how recent it is. But if you like search Native American, it shows how it's like black and white and like feathers and regalias, which isn't completely us, to be honest. Halka, Shahuk Mike, Chapot, Harmony Mina Chuhi, Sakwan Makawai.
Well, like our whole school is kind of all natives, but people treat you different.
How so?
So say another person, not Paiute or not native, they do something bad. 90% of us always get in trouble for their mistakes.
Oh, so it's kind of like discriminating.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
We do that?
Yeah. Yeah, and us being native, we all have brown eyes, so people say that we don't really have anything like pretty about our eyes, but I think brown eyes are gorgeous, so we draw brown eyes all the time.
Just because we can be in these modern environments doesn't negate or diminish our indigeneity.
Native Americans listen to hip hop, rap, old school R&B, country. When we were in the classroom, Chris was telling us that he made a song. So then we all listened to him singing, and we're all excited. And he's talking about his story and how he grew up.
Don't need my name known, but I bleed to be heard. Thoughts of mine alone, while nephews hang on every word. Focus like a soul, boy is here to call the duty. Sound serving the people, build a strong community. Someone saying something new to me, nothing to do with jewelry. Never promoting foolery.
I just want them to not feel sympathy or pity towards us, and also just to like not degrade us or make us like think that we're dumb.
We are trying to do something. Just at least our little tribe. In the eyes of the government, our people are not even a race.
When I say we're still here, I mean it. Like, we're still alive. We're still passing our traditions. We're still being very cultural. A couple months ago, we all met up in the mountains. We organized a group at like 2 a.m. against the logging companies because their slush from where they're logging is falling into the rivers, and it's affecting our salmon. And our salmon are endangered right now, so we've been fighting for that, and we stopped them from coming in and logging that day. I believe that, yes, we should stand up for our rights and that we should unite together so we can make sure that we get what we believe are our necessities, our land, our water, and our culture back. The water's been taken away by LADWP, and it's been put in aqueducts, and our biggest lake, which was Mona Lake, is now just puddle. We still have problems. We've grown and we learned so much, and we get stronger every time. Even though we don't want the pain, we've dealt with so much already, but at the same time, we have to look at it like, with this, we get knowledge and we come back powerful and strong. We can come up with more ideas to fight back, and hopefully we can show that we don't want this pain anymore. We're human, and we have all the equal rights to everybody else. I would like to see my homeland more prosperous and more green, like how it is here.
The whole planet is covered in water. Even the animals and the people, they're water too. We're all my dad says, we're all water droplets, and we're a part of a body that is functioning with ourselves and with other people.
We think of these as only the center of surf culture, and it is that. But there's a far, far deeper history, these beach landscapes. All of these spaces are Indian land.
So when I'm surfing, just a sense of relief, a sense of joyful happiness and spiritual anxiety all vanished. And you're with the water, and you're with this wave that's traveled for thousands and thousands of miles. All you can do is kind of ignite it, live in the moment, and be thankful for in my case, surfing is my passion.
When the moon's asleep, the sun will be up in the air when the sun sets. The Hacian, the wind, or the ocean of the west. Then the moon will come up. And that's why things are the way they are today.
I like to play sports and mess around with my siblings. One sport that I really like to play is basketball. I also like to hang out with my friends and go to powwows and do bird dancing with my family. Who taught you how to bird dance? My grandpa. My grandpa's Anthony J. Andreas. Our family is really very involved with their tribe. We're very traditional.
So he was the elder of the Pinetum clan, who raised by a man that knew all his tradition.
Versing is what our culture is, and I want people to know that. The bird songs mean the migration of our Korean people.
They thought that maybe they would find something better. It was not so dry in that area, and the water resources were bad, so they decided that maybe we'd go elsewhere. I didn't realize no, we didn't go back home. So as we came back home, a certain point we turned to birds and flew back into Avocado.
Doche means hummingbird. Moa means agave in Korea. Moa means to pick a good. Chome means the end, so then they're talking about the end of them picking the agave. One of my cousins, they took us to do agave roasting. We have this thing called Learning Day, Dominica, and we have it every year. And before we go agave picking, and then we roast it, and at the event, we all eat it. I don't know, it's hard to explain it because for natives, we understand it in our heart, but explaining to somebody else is different. So I mean, when in spirit we can feel, and I guess you can say when we feel more motivated, and we can connect with the songs when we hear it.
I really want to find, like I said, that healthy balance of helping my people and also going out and traveling and doing different things and just learning and bringing that home to my people.
with the beautiful ocean behind us. And, you know, like when you're standing in the water and you can feel that, like, pull, you know, that's what I feel right here. Like, we're meant to be here right now in this time, in this place.
My community is a part of me. I guess, like, in a way of, like, helping my community is helping myself and helping all of us collectively. I hope the youth sees this film, especially not just natives. I want other people to see it too. Maybe they can come in and unite and grow together and hopefully stand as one. At the end of the day, all of us have the same problems. So if we all come with a solution together, and I just want people to see that, because just because we're native doesn't mean we don't have the same problems as other people too.
To be native is to be connected with everything. And to be connected with everything is to be part of Earth. And to be part of Earth is just to be another water drop.
I see that it gives them fuel to keep in the work and to keep doing the work. So it's good. It's a good thing. And I think that's the water is the one thing that all people have in common in the whole world. You know, we all need water, and I think that we'll all have to come together to stand up for water. So it'll be a good thing. We'll get much more done with being one.
We're still here. We're not going nowhere. We're still here.
Okay, folks, so let's share real quick, and then if Mark, if you're here, let me know. Or Manny. Oh, Mark is here. Hi, Mark, are you here? I'm gonna ask to unmute you. Okay, I'm gonna give him a sec. Oh, are you here? Yeah. So what did you all see were some of the issues from this video?
I saw a lot of government issues within like the wooding and how they're destroying the salmon and making them like infected some type of way. I mean, I know that there is something going on with that as well, with the pipelines and stuff. Like the indigenous people were trying to boycott it and not have it over there. But yeah, that's another issue too.
So the encroachment on their lands, right? And the disruption of their ways of life and ways of
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so Mark, now that you're here, do you want to go ahead and just say hello to everyone? And if there's anything that you want to add to, we just finished watching both videos. So if there's anything you want to add. Well, we can't hear you. It looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Oh no. So he did warn me that, you know, he has a hard time connecting from Oaxaca. So Mark, if you can hear me, just go ahead and jump in at any moment. In the meanwhile, we're gonna keep the conversation going. Does anybody else wanna touch on that? Like what were some of the other issues that these Native communities are facing?
I think an issue was that they didn't think that they were treated fairly.
In what ways?
And what happened?
In what way? So they weren't being treated.
Like, I know one of the girls said that at school she felt like discriminated against.
Okay.
And also the guy that was talking about how when he searched up Native American history, he didn't find the real history.
So typically, as we've been talking about in this class, whatever history has been written about Native Americans has been written through what perspective?
Through, what's it called?
Go ahead, say it.
The lens, but I forgot the name of it.
European?
Yeah, through the European lens.
Through a European lens, right? So it's kind of like, have you ever seen one of those illusion pictures where you can see more than one thing at a time? Right? But it's the same picture. And so that's what telling history is like. So depending on who is looking at that picture through their lens, they're going to see something different than, say, another person who's looking at the same picture but they see something completely different, right? So that's the issue with the writing of history. Again, Mark, if you're there, just go ahead and jump in if you're able to connect. So what are they doing to push back on these issues?
It seemed like they went out to protest about like them controlling the flow of the river, I believe.
Yeah, that was one of the things, right? They have to organize and they have to go out and protest and push back. Hi, Mark, are you with us? I see him, but I can't hear him. Any others as far as like what they were doing to push back? Are you with us, Mark? Oh, I can tell he's trying to speak, but it's just really spotty. And then what other things did you all notice as far as either what they're doing to push back on these challenges or what kind of society are they working towards? Don't be shy now, let's hear your voices.
They were saying that they wanted a world where they have equal rights like everyone else.
So what do y'all think, how do y'all think that going to these kinds of gatherings for intertribal youth, like how do you think that might affect these youth, or how can it help them to be able to try to create the world that they want to live in? What do you think that experience might have been like for them?
They're probably like reconnecting with their traditions.
Speak a little louder, it's really low.
They're reconnecting with their cultural traditions, like they're reconnecting with their ancestors.
Yeah, so reconnecting with their cultural traditions and their ancestors. Why is that important?
So that way, like right now, if we plant a little seed inside their head, since they're young, as they grow, they're gonna have that in mind that they have to bring back what they had before and what they've been doing.
Okay, good, excellent. Anybody else? Why would it be important to reconnect with all of that?
I think it's like it's like a generational thing. You know, they're trying, kind of like what Brenda said, is there's like that seed in their head, and they'll be able to pass on those traditions.
Exactly. And so why is reconnecting with culture, reconnecting with ancestors, understanding your traditions and passing them on, how is that a way to push back against these discriminatory or racist issues that we have to deal with as people of color? What do traditions and culture have to do with that?
To show everyone how it really is, like, because not everyone like knows what truly the tradition is or what they do or what they're meant for, and they just talk because they heard it from somewhere else, like saying all the negative things, and that's how they have that in mind, that it's like different than how it actually is.
Mm-hmm. So I want y'all to ask yourselves, like from a scale of 1 to 10, how connected do you feel to your traditions and culture and your ancestors? How connected do you all feel? Maybe show me like your number with your fingers. If you can show on your screen. Okay, I see a 5. What else? A 3, 6, 4, maybe another 4, 5. We got a 7. We got a 6. Okay, good. And I see numbers in the chat. So anywhere between like 4 to 7, right? Even a 3. And this could be because it's generational, or because we no longer, there's a 2 to a 3, and we no longer speak the language of our ancestors, right? And not only that, but we are rarely taught any of this in school, right? Until you happen to stumble across a class like this. Then you begin to finally learn and peel away those layers of colonization, right? And unlearn what you have learned as far as who we are as a people, or who you are as a people, whoever your people may be. But like really beginning to discover that there's a lot more to our identities and our cultures and our traditions than we initially thought. Are you with us, Mark?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Welcome, welcome. So we're just having this rich discussion right now about how important it is to reconnect with our indigeneity, our culture, our traditions in a way to decolonize. So is there anything else that you want to add to the discussion?
Me?
Yes.
Not really add. I mean, I liked what there was a professor who stated something on the last video where we were at the beach. Her name was Professor Dina, and I really like what she says about indigeneity, and it kind of surrounds us where we go. So just being in a space, in a way, we can make that an indigenous space by who we are and what we exclude or give off. So I think that's something that's really important to know, because I think we walk into different worlds, into different spaces, and sometimes we might feel insecure about where we are, and we need to remind ourselves that we are Earth-based people. We're Earth people. Just that is itself can turn that environment into maybe uncomfortable to being like really an ownership. And the reason I even say that is we have to remind ourselves that this is a natural state of being.
Okay, and this is Mark, correct?
Yeah, this is Mark.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mark? He is the founder of Intertribal Youth and Native Like Water. So the videos that you watched and all these amazing programs, right, to help youth really get to understand who they are as Indigenous people, he established these programs. Like, that's pretty impressive, and it's powerful. So does anyone have any questions or comments for Mark?
I have a question, but I don't know how to like state it. So like, how do your students like know that they like belong there? If that makes any sense. Like, how do you know like, oh, you like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, how do they know that like, how are they like accepted into like your programs, you know?
Well, that's a good question. I think at the high school age, I would say over half of them are kind of insecure about being in the program or even how they got there. And then I think everybody comes from different backgrounds. So there's folks who might not even know their Indigenous roots. They have the heritage, they have the lineage, they have the roots, but they might not even know that. And they themselves, or perhaps their parents, urge them to go to the program to learn more. And I think that's something that most of us share, is that we all need to learn more. And so in a way, we're all kind of in the same boat with learning, where there's folks who don't know that much. And then there's some more traditional people too that might practice certain things and know more, but at the same time, they might not know their connection to the ocean. So there's these huge chunks, or what I call volumes of information, that are kind of left out of our story. And that's why it takes us to have a living process of that investigation, of that knowledge and knowing. And so we're all kind of in the same boat. And I think, but what attracts everybody to the program is this is what we're going to get on with. We're going to get on with learning new things. And I think that's what attracts folks. But I think the insecurity of knowing oneself and knowing one's birthright is very pervasive through the group, regardless of where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you for that. Those are very powerful words, right? Like to know who we are and where we come from and the land that we are connected to and our ancestors are connected to, that's our birthright. And so I'm going to continue to invite all of you and to encourage all of you to continue to research your family history, research where your family originated from, and then look up what tribal groups are or were in that area. Because the more that you do that, the closer you're going to get to finding out who you are as a whole and complete person and all of your identities that you carry within. And to do that is your birthright. To look for that information and to be able to claim that part of you is your birthright. To be able to visit the lands of where your ancestors come from, that is your birthright. To hold some kind of ceremony on that land is your birthright. And so continue to research and dig into that, talk to your families. There's a lot of really, a lot of churches and whatnot that kept a lot of records of people from baptisms, marriages, births, and you can trace information that way. So I encourage you to do that. Mark, thank you for being with us. I want to just thank you for the amazing work that you're doing for Indigenous youth, Indigenous peoples, and so many sectors, in case you get cut off. But I just want to thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And we do have to move on to the next speaker, but I did just want to thank you in case you get cut off, and we'll see you at the next session, but you're welcome to stay with us to the end in case there are more questions, okay? All
okay,
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So our next guest speaker is Alejandro Lara-Briseno. And Alejandro, you're going to help me pronounce this. If you can turn your camera on, that would be super helpful so we can see who you are and where you are. Let me see where Alex is at. I thought I saw him in here. Are you here, Alex? There you are. Okay, good to see you. So you are, I cannot pronounce that word. What is that word? Help me out. In your bio. Ajgich, or ¿cómo se dice? Can you hear me, Alex? I don't know if he can hear me. Can you hear me? So he is dedicated to teaching decoloniality, Mayan cosmology, and plant medicine. He guides de-Indigenized natives, so people who have lost their indigeneity, on how to return to ancestral systems of knowledge and works to break the hold of colonial systems. He is an Indigenous rights defender. He is Nahuatl in origin, and he studied as an undergraduate at UC Berkeley and as a graduate student at the University of Oxford. But his true studies began after he turned away from academia and was welcomed into native ways, both the Mayan Camino Blanco and what Northern natives call the Red Road. Alex, thank you for joining us. Can you hear me? We can't hear you. Technology. Can you hear us? I still can't hear you. He might be trying to connect on another computer. But when I go over, it says that he's not muted right now. So there's something going on with his sound. And he's trying to connect in, I think, in another computer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So you're going to see the video come out of one, but I'm using somebody else's computer right now.
Okay. I do have multiple shares.
But you can hear me?
Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Oh, there's no camera on this computer. Okay. So we're going to have to do without the video, but you can hear me right now. So I was listening to some of what was being said before about individuals and their being able to identify as being native, being welcomed into spaces. So what I can begin with first, before I get into all of that, is, let's see. Can you really briefly, hold on. Sorry about these connection issues. Can you hear this audio right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the other computer still. Can you try that again?
Oh.
No, it's still on the other computer.
Okay, you can hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you on Rosa's computer.
Okay. So let me begin with first, I'm a Makih. Makih is a ceremonial leader amongst the Mayan people. Our duties have to do with protecting and teaching Mayan ways.
Can you speak a little louder, Alan? If you can speak a little louder.
Okay. Can you hear me better right now?
That's a little better, yeah. If you could just speak more directly into the speaker, that would help.
Okay. So I'm Anunnaki, and the term translates to word for word to something like day counter. We use the sacred calendar, the Tzolkin, or also known as the Chorkik. It is a 260-day calendar that also is used by multiple Mesoamerican tribes, including the Mexica. They just have different names for the Nahuatl. But before I get into that, ultimately the notion of decolonization for individuals who are de-Indigenized, which is the vast majority of natives at this point, it really comes down to the origin of practices. You may be walking in nature, and one key thing is that you need to remember you are native, but decoloniality really comes down to what you believe, how you think. So one way that I can illustrate this is just asking you all to briefly think about this. How many of you know your zodiac sign? How many of you are Sagittarius or Libra or Cancer? Okay. How many of you know your Nahuatl? And that's the issue. I will also connect it to the issue of how many of you believe in the Western notions of mental health? You know, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, ADD, all these notions that Western civilization teaches us. We have, through no fault of our own, centered the belief systems, the knowledge systems of Western civilization. The fact that you can walk out there and tell people and speak about a constellation system that is not in any way related to your indigenous roots is a form of colonization. The fact that you can walk around and believe that you suffer from a mental illness and you do not know the ways that native tribes address human behavior is a form of colonization. Almost nobody knows that all of these notions of mental illness were invented by a racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic colonizer named Benjamin Rush in the late 1700s. He is known as the father of psychiatry. And yet everybody walks around and doesn't question these ideas that they are mentally ill. I will offer you a story. This has been published a few times and even though I am Native, this is a story that comes from an African healer who had come to the US and was shown a psychiatric institution. And in that space, he was shown how they treated people with what white folks call schizophrenia. And the African healer was really saddened because he said, in his people's way, those were sacred people who had a capacity of understanding the world through a different lens. They would not be drugged. They would not be locked up. They would not be punished. So it was really sad for him to see how Western civilization would treat what in his people's way was viewed as sacred. Similarly, in multiple native tribes, the people that are not viewed as what Western civilization would call disabled. Science is labeled as having Down syndrome, and they enjoy pathologizing people and creating labels. But in native spaces, everybody was equal. You were not created or viewed as being different, as a pathology, as an illness. You were seen as somebody who had special lessons that had to be taught. And this all begins to really, like, I offer this to you as a way for you to reflect when you're walking around in life and you begin to think the ideas, the norms that you carry, where did they come from? What is their origins? Because the fact that you can walk around and you don't know your Nahuatl, you don't know the thousands and upon thousands of years old systems of knowledge of human behavior, of health, of medicine, that you don't know this about your own people, basically speaks to the level of colonization that is happening. And anti-colonialism is really about fighting for land, for fighting for kind of that political rights. But colonization really does come down to, in a much more profound way, to the systems of knowledge you carry, whether that's notions of race, class, gender, sexuality, religion. The fact that I went to these universities and I never learned anything about my people, not once. In these spaces, I was confronted with white interpretations of our knowledge, rather silly notions of who we are, And they don't even question it, not once. They don't privilege knowledge written by people of color. They don't give us those spaces. And even when we are able to fight for a little space, they really still do privilege white knowledge and their white view of how they break things down. And I could really go for days about the different systems of knowledge that we all recreate. But with what I do in guiding individuals to return to their native ways, I teach the Nahuatls so that the next time somebody is struggling in life, they're not blaming a practice that originated in the 1800s of blaming the position of the planet Mercury for their behavior or for how bad their life goes. I'm sure all of you have heard folks on social media commenting about life sucks because of Mercury retrograde or something. And that's not even remotely something that our native tribes, at least my native tribes that I'm connected to, use or think with. We were scientists, astronomers, biologists, horticulturalists. We were experts in dozens and dozens of fields, and all of that knowledge you don't learn in school. There's also the thing that, you know, our ways are oral traditions. So we have to learn as teachers how we can begin to communicate these ways to youth, to next generations. My elders that I've learned with, they tend to shy away from social media, from being videoed, and yet the young generation, everybody is looking at life now through this way. That essentially that is the subject of, if you start examining your daily life, look at how it is that you're, how you live, how you think, why you do things you do. I could also bring up other examples like tarot. Tarot is not a native practice. I see people starting to mix native Nahuatls and native ideas and putting them on tarot cards. And that really is like a form of cultural appropriation. There's also other things that we enjoy, but sometimes you have to stop and think about where they came from. I'm sure you're all familiar with Loteria. Loteria was a game that started with the upper classes in Italy throughout Europe several centuries ago. But nowadays people go about their days and they don't stop to think like, oh, we're doing things that really have no connection to our roots. We have been taught to practice European ways for far too long, honestly. At this point, you're more than welcome to ask any questions.
Thank you for that, Alex. So there's a lot of good conversation going on in the chat. So I'm gonna ask those of you that are chatting to please go ahead and share with Alex your comments or ask them any questions or things that you connected with. Ernie, you wanna jump in here since you're a psych major?
I'm not even sure how to phrase it.
Go ahead.
Because I know like there's like a whole stigma that's always been like behind like this treatment of like mental illness or anything. That it's just like it just makes people feel like, how do you say it? It just makes people think that they're weak just for seeking help.
Yeah. So I understand this.
An oppressive force on a lot of people, like due to like even like the societal norms we're in, because admitting that you're have an illness just makes you feel like you're less of a person for it.
I understand. One way that I would, and I have had this conversation with individuals, you're dealing with two things with Western civilization. One is that they view behavior through this perspective of illness. And the second thing is then they shame people that they pathologize. Both the pathologization of people and the shaming of people for being pathologized are two systems of control and oppression that originated in coloniality. In our native ways, for instance, if somebody's communicating to me that they are depressed, I don't pathologize them. I don't treat them as though they should be ashamed for any of the feelings that they're having. It's quite the opposite. It's asking people to really look at why they feel the way they do. We are living under pressures of colonization, where we've been torn away from our spiritual roots, our family ties that taught those spiritual roots. So when somebody's feeling these particular categorizations, in native ways, we have different ways of treating it. Every tribe has different knowledge systems. If somebody's with the Dene have a tremendous long history of how to treat behavior. They have different explanations for why people behave the way they do. The Lakota, I mean, every single tribe in the Americas has its own history. In the Mayan ways, I use the Nahuatls, which there are 20 of them. I use them to be able to identify who the person is, what are these natural conditions of this person, the energies that they carry. I don't stigmatize them. We don't stigmatize them. We don't shame them. We don't pathologize them. We don't tell people they're sick or they're ill. It's a much more humane way of dealing with people. But again, in our native ways, we weren't trying to categorize people. We weren't trying to pathologize them, to shame them. We're not trying to dominate them. But Western civilization really is about that. So even their mental health profession is rooted in oppression and domination, to the point where now we don't know our ways, our knowledge, unless you are lucky enough to have come across native elders who opened the doors for you and started teaching you, which I happen to be one of them. I was a de-Indigenized person and I tried academia, and I've been to therapists. None of that ever worked. And when I turned away from academia, and I'm not saying that's the way for everybody, it is very important work for our people to fight for spaces in academia, because otherwise you wouldn't have professors like your professor having this class for you. So it is important. At the same time, I would still be trapped in these systems of colonization if it hadn't been for my Mayan teachers, for my Chichimeca teacher who walks the red road, who was opened or welcomed into Lakota ways. Fortunately, there are more and more of us. I hope that kind of explains some of the notions of therapy, like how we deal with it as Mayans, as Mexica, versus how Western civilization does it.
What does anybody else have a question?
I have a question about like, okay, so how do you feel about doctors capitalizing on medicine and prescribing people like antidepressants and stuff when they actually don't really need them? Because I've had that problem many times when I've gone to a therapist and they have like one conversation with me and then they say, oh, you have this, 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 and this, and this. And then, okay, I need you to have this type of medicine and this type of medicine. And if it doesn't work, then you come back and we get a higher dose. Like, how do you feel about these doctors capitalizing on these types of medicine and medications that it's probably not the best for you? And how do you get away from that and say that, okay, maybe you do have something wrong, but you don't want to go the medication route. You want to go like the holistic route.
Okay, so I have run into this. There was a period of time when I was a teenager that I helped my mother clean clinics. And I started seeing that Western doctors, medical doctors, not psychiatrists, not therapists, were also just prescribing Prozac left and right. They're prescribing all these big pharma medications. Let me rephrase that, big pharma narcotics. They're not medicines, not in my opinion. It's not scientific what they do. It's, if you ever want to really delve into this, and I wouldn't recommend it just because it's kind of horrible, you can look at the history of the mental industry, how they arrived at notions of different illnesses. But when it comes to the drugs, there is a distinct guinea pig effect happening. That's not, I mean, granted, there is a level of that even in regular medical Western medicine. Is there's a lot of speculation. It's not an exact science. And to that extent, you almost have to refrain from calling it science because science is supposed to be exact, but they can't really pinpoint what category you are. And if you go to 10 different therapists, they will give you 10 different analysis, and they will give you 10 different medicines. And honestly, those things are toxic and they have very severe side effects, like psychotic breaks, suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies. Native practices don't make you want to go kill yourself. They don't make you want to kill other people. They don't make you feel like you're walking around in a drug-induced stupor. So how do you find a different path? Through people like me, through finding elders who, and even then it's very difficult because there are many of our elders that are very connected to these systems. Right now, if you look even at jobs, right? If you get a job in the mental health industry as a therapist, you're making about 50 grand a year. The entire government validates and legitimizes it by having tests, certificates, licenses. That doesn't exist for aquí. That doesn't exist for curanderos. We are not validated, legitimized by the colonial system because honestly, we are at odds with them. We do not send people down these paths. So it is very difficult, honestly. It was like, I knew my grandparents on one side were curanderos. I lost connection with them and I did not have access to curanderos again until about 10 years ago. I'm sorry, was somebody saying something?
Does that make sense? I know it does to me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alex, for that presentation. We're at 4:10, and we actually do have a third person coming in to share with us, and she's just gonna talk a couple minutes about some propositions and voting and whatnot, and ways for you to be agents of change in this process. But first, Alex, thank you so much for your presentation and your contribution to this discussion. It is really important to continue to figure out ways how to decolonize in all of these ways, right? In the way that we see ourselves, first of all, and how we are connected to the land and to the water, to our medicine ways, to our healing ways, whether it's from mental health issues to a variety of things, right? So always know and understand that most, if not just about everything that we have been exposed to and that has become a normal part of our way of living is really centered on European or Western ways of thinking. And sometimes you'll see like small elements of indigeneity woven in there because we're on indigenous land. And so there's no getting away from that. But the majority of it is really focused on a European lens. And oftentimes it's not the best way for indigenous people because we already had our own ways. And so when we take on these Western ways, then it continues to keep us colonized mentally, spiritually, even academically, in every which way. So just keep that in account and continue to ask yourself, how can I continue to decolonize myself as an individual, right? But again, thank you so much, Alex. So there's another Alex. This is a female Alex. So Alex is here representing a nonprofit organization in Ventura County called Cause. And so I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to her. Alex, if you wanna explain to everybody why you're visiting us today.
Yes, hi everyone, thank you. Yeah, Alex is in the house today, huh? Thank you, Vero, for letting us join your class and share this really quick announcement. So my name is Alex Garcia. I'm a community organizer with Cause, as well as Cause Action Fund here in Ventura. And yeah, so I don't know if y'all have heard of Cause, but just generally what we work for, fight for immigrants' rights, farm workers' rights, renters' rights, protecting our communities against environmental racism, et cetera. And so, but yeah, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. And so we have limits on what we can do. For example, we can't endorse candidates during elections, which is why we have our sister organization, which is Cause Action Fund. It's a 501c4, and that one doesn't have any restrictions. And so during elections right now is when we switch our work from Cause blue shirts to Cause Action Fund, which are yellow shirts. And so anyway, I'm here to invite you all to get involved this election here locally and volunteer with us with Cause Action Fund. November 3rd is 3 weeks away and people are already sending in their ballots. So yeah, it's really urgent that we reach out to our communities as soon as possible and get out information. And so I know we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, just ideally we're looking for bilingual folks to help us phone banking. And so it's not a requirement, but yeah, it's something that we look for because a lot of our outreach is very intentional, right, to our Latinx young voters and also, progressive left-leaning voters. And so if you're interested, in making a difference in your community, to talk about the local, local elections, like who's going to be on city council, school board, county board of supervisors, please sign up with us. And I can, if it's okay, I'm going to put a Google form link on the chat for folks that are interested. Okay, so I just posted it on there. And yeah, there's an option. You can volunteer in Ventura City or you can volunteer in Oxnard. And yeah, we'll be reaching out if you sign up the days that we're doing it, the times, and then see when you're available. No previous experience is necessary. We train all our volunteers on how to use our script and how to mark responses for folks. And we are, a nonprofit with limited resources. So we are asking folks to use their own computers and their cell phones to help us make these calls. But yeah, everything's virtual. We meet via Zoom and do our work that way. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Alex, did you say that there's going to be a little bit of a training or something for anybody who signs up to prepare them?
Yes, yeah. At the beginning of each of our sessions or our shifts, we have a training. Yeah, so we'll talk through what we're going to be talking to folks. Our big focus is Prop 15, which is a state prop to make corporations pay their fair share of taxes, but also, in each city talking about the local candidates that are running. Yeah.
All right, y'all. So we've been talking about this all semester in ways that you can put your agency to work and actually do something and participate in something that will make an impact, a lasting impact in our communities. And as we've been talking, that this election coming up is absolutely critical, not only because it's a presidential election, but also because of the many propositions that are on the ballot. And there's a lot of confusion behind a lot of those propositions. So this will give you an opportunity not only to learn about those propositions a lot more, but then also, and again, this is if it's in line with your political stance. If you feel like you're in line with the propositions and leaning one way or another that is more progressive, and you feel like that's in line with your own ideals, then this is a good opportunity for you to participate in a way to make sure that other people vote in this way that is going to bring some sort of relief to marginalized communities. And so if you want to be part of that, then this is an opportunity. Cause has been around for a long time. They're a very reputable organization. Alex has been great. I've worked with her in a lot of different ways. And so these are great people to be connected to, pick up some skills and then participate in this. And as you know, this would count for class as well, if you want to count it as an Agents of Change activity, okay? So make sure that you click on the Google link that she provided in the chat so that when we exit Zoom, you already have it open on your computer. And if you're interested, then you can go ahead and sign up there, and then Alex or whoever will get in touch with you for the next steps, okay? And then, so the commitment is like a 2-hour block or something like that?
Yes, yeah.
2 hours. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for visiting Alex and the other Alex and Mark. And thank you everybody for being patient with all the technical issues today. But if you have any questions, you know how to reach me, and we will keep this moving, and I will see you next week. Have a great, wonderful weekend. And I hope that you get in touch with Alex, okay? All right, everyone, have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.